Now, more controversy today around the Badger Cull going on in Gloucestershire at the moment. Campaigners have apparently been trying to get hold of DEFRA's so-called Cull Humaneness document, giving details on how cruel or kind the method of shooting the badgers is judged to be. Now, they say the paperwork released by the government has been heavily and unjustifiably redacted. Joining me is the Executive Director of the Humane Society, Mark Jones. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening.
So just explain then what your problem is.
Well, let me begin by saying that Humane Society International is fundamentally opposed to the culling of badgers as part of the government's strategy for controlling TB in cattle. We recognise the hardship and cost to farmers and the taxpayer caused by bovine TB, but we do not believe that culling badgers has any scientific or ethical basis. Now, we've been trying to get DEFRA to release information, as you said, on how and by what criteria the humaneness of badger shooting will be measured for many months, since last October, in fact. And this is really important. As most of your listeners will be aware, the two so-called pilot badger culls are underway now in Gloucestershire and in Somerset. And the government says that these pilots are designed to measure whether the target number of around 5,000 badgers can be killed across the two zones over a 6-week period by the shooters, and whether it proves to be humane for the badgers and safe for the public. And decisions on whether to roll this policy out to much larger areas of the country in the coming years will depend on the outcomes of these measures. So the fate of many tens of thousands of badgers rests on the assessments that DEFRA will be making.
So you want to see the figures before they're due to be released at the end of the cull?
Well, obviously we can't see the figures, but what's really important is that DEFRA's humaneness assessment methods and criteria are robust and can stand up to public and independent scientific scrutiny. But DEFRA's gone to great and I have to say, very cynical lengths to prevent disclosure of its methods, hiding behind the environmental information regulations. And after a long, many-month process of requests and appeals by us, the Information Commissioner finally ruled on the 6th of August that DEFRA was wrong to use the regulations in the way it had to avoid releasing the information, and ordered its release to us within 35 days. That deadline passed yesterday, and we're still waiting.
I've had a statement from DEFRA this evening. It says, we have been granted an extension and are considering whether to appeal the Information Commissioner's decision. The humaneness evaluation criteria, as agreed with the independent panel of experts, will be published along with a full account and assessment of the pilot culls once they have concluded. So that perhaps explains why you haven't seen things. An extension has been granted.
Well, I've spoken to the Information Commissioner's office this morning. At that stage, they didn't have any information, or certainly didn't disclose any information to me about any extension. DEFRA had a deadline of about a week ago in order to lodge an appeal against the order of the Information Commissioner's office, or, as I say, a deadline of yesterday to release the information to us. It's done neither. And really, this is just another example of DEFRA's very cynical efforts to string out the process of trying to delay the disclosure of this information for as long as it can.
Is it cynical or is it sensible? They're trying to carry out a pilot, as you said at the start of our conversation. It's a pilot cull to release figures before the end of the pilot, before they've worked out exactly what went on. They can put their reports together and have a look at whether it's been effective or not. If they start dripping out figures within that time, doesn't that then have a chance of actually wasting the opportunity for a pilot, which is something that that's been campaigned for?
Well, bear in mind, it's not figures we're asking for, it's the methodology and criteria by which they're going to measure humaneness. And, you know, in our view, DEFRA's determination to avoid releasing this vital information, to the point of defying a legally binding instruction from the Information Commissioner, is astonishing. And we can only assume it's because DEFRA knows its humaneness assessments won't stand up to scrutiny. We're really
Well, if that's the case, surely they're going to be expecting a barrage of criticism afterwards. So if they had something to hide, they know they've got to disclose it in the end.
Well, as I say, what we need to do is to make sure that whatever methodology and criteria they are using to measure humaneness is robust or is open to independent evaluation before they start to use it. We're really concerned here that the shooting of badgers at night with shotguns and rifles is going to result in many targeted badgers not being killed outright and suffering a very slow and painful death. These are nocturnal, cryptic animals close to the ground, the heart and chest area, which will be the target area for for the shooters, is well protected by the stocky forelimb and the musculature. And we really don't believe that DEFRA's method of assessing how humane this process is going to take that fully into account. From the little we do know, it seems the level of oversight and analysis that's being undertaken by DEFRA during these pilot culls is woefully inadequate.
One final question. They've been granted an extension. They're considering whether to appeal the Information Commissioner's decision. What's your next move?
Well, as I say, the information that you've given me that they've been granted an extension is new to me, and when I spoke to the Information Commissioner earlier today, they made no mention of that, which seems strange. But from here, as far as we're concerned, the Information Commissioner, depending on whether or not you're right in terms of that extension, could initiate legal proceeding against DEFRA for its failure to comply with the Information Commissioner's order. We'll be encouraging every effort to get DEFRA to come clean and release this information, and in the meantime we implore ministers to abandon this unjustified, unpopular and pointless cull.
Mark, thank you very much for joining us. Mark Jones, Executive Director of the Humane Society.